Okay, my YouTubies and others. Never know where this video is going to end up. I want to tell you how we lost the memory of the Cronides. This isn't going to be a fancy video. I'm just going to get right to the point. In the age of COVID, you never know what's going to happen. And I'm trying to compile this information, but I'm just not going to be able to get it out as quickly as I want. So I'm going to just get some of this out quickly. As you know from my research, I believe Jehovah is Zeus and all his other names, that the entire Semitic religious structure is based on these Cronides, which also includes Cronus. I've written many books on the subject. I've given you the ancient texts that prove it out. But this is a character named Osarseph that was written allegedly by Manetho and quoted by Josephus. And what I have found is that some of the works of Manetho survived and some of it did not. And the same thing goes with Diodorus Siculus. And one has to wonder if that was on purpose. Now, there was nothing going on when Manetho, from the 3rd century BC, started to write about this Osarseph being equated with Moses. There was no Catholic Church or anything, no Christianity. And if you look at this page, you'll find the tale is that Osarseph was a renegade priest, allegedly, that sided with a leper army and the Hyksos. And I've told you that the Hyksos are the Sephardic Jews, and that comes from the Argive dynasty, according to Manetho. Now, it was this Osarseph who created the monotheism, and you'll find that they say the Hyksos and Osarseph created Jerusalem. That's the beginning of Israel. And I've told you that the real Jews are the Sephardic ones, and they go back to the Argive dynasty, which is that of Perseus and Hercules, going back to Zeus. So going back to Jehovah. Interestingly, you'll find that Alexander the Great is allegedly part of that bloodline as well, just a different offshoot of the Argive dynasty, per some scholars. Now, I would agree with this person, Jan, who believes that Osarseph is just a combination of some of the things going on at that time. And I would basically say Osarseph was Akhenaten. If you look at some of the history of Egypt, and I'm going to get into this down the road, knock on wood, if I'm still standing, about the Egyptians and the Hyksos and the different pharaohs, and how the 15th and 16th dynasties were Hyksos, and then they were run out. And the pharaohs came back in. The 17th dynasty and the 18th dynasty continued to undo them, and the 19th dynasty. And then there's a whole history of Egypt where different bloodlines were coming in and out. And then the last one goes back to this Argive dynasty. Now, there's a list of burial places for people in the Bible. There's a list of places for the apostles. And they are said to have the remains of the apostles. There's one in India. So there's some truth to this. There's truth to this Semitic religion. But it is my opinion, it's their terminology for this Cronide bloodline fighting a different bloodline for rulership. And it is here with this Osarseph that things became lost. And it is interesting, in my opinion, this is the tomb of David. Well, this is a cenotaph, which means there's no body there. And the same thing goes for Solomon. But the rest of these are supposed to have bodies, especially some of the disciples and apostles around the world. And you know, the Catholic Church had relics of the saints and disciples and apostles, which were parts of their body or something about them, spread out in different places. But they don't have control of all these places that have these burials. You know, some of them are under Muslims now, or Christians in Ethiopia or India. So it can't really be made up. But because this tomb of David, and this is where it was supposed to be, okay, is a cenotaph, there's no body here. And I feel in my research, and I'm going to try and prove this out based on the history of Egypt and the Semitic area, that the kings of Israel were the pharaohs who ruled over them at that time. And I'm going to equate the pharaohs Seti and Ramses to David and Solomon. And I believe I'm going to prove it out to show you that Ramses the Great, who built many temples, especially a temple to Amun, also had a big library that has not been found, allegedly. He was very wise, and he had many wives, just like King Solomon. Now, this is going to take a lot more work. And, I'm going to have to go slowly and prove it out. Knock on wood, I stay healthy and all that. But here you can see he's kicking. This is Ramses. Look at how tall this guy was. Kicking these guys out. And this is when they were under this rulership of this pharaoh. And what I believe happened is the histories got combined due to this person. And that is when we lost the understanding of these Cronides. And at this point, I am equating Amun with Zeus. And there's some backup on that because I found some literature where Alexander the Great equated him as well to Amun to being Zeus. So this is how things got combined through this guy. And I believe this guy, Osarseph, is this guy, Akhenaten, who was roaming around in the desert to build the temple, which they did build their city, right? To the Atan. He had this vision of this Atan, and he did build a temple, but he died out there somewhere, and no one's sure where his body is. And they do have a skull they think is his. And that one goes backwards. It's one of those kind of strange skulls. It's not normal. But he never made it to Jerusalem. And when he was gone, they had to bring back the old religion. And that came from Seti and Ramses and the Horem-Heb. So take a look at that. Now I want to show you, this is something I'm going to say when I did some kind of shamanic meditation, I've seen something similar. It is the ball of light, and it is something that people see in near-death experiences. And I'm going to just show you with Enoch. It's in his photos as well. Okay. Here it is right here. That's the Atan. And you can argue or it's not or whatever, but that's my opinion. This is the same as what Akhenaten had. Okay. So it is with Osarseph, who I believe, as well as the other lady, is Akhenaten, that things went to monotheism and the memory of the Cronides began to disappear. It's this one. This is where it began, and he went with the Hyksos and people that had leprosy, and they created Jerusalem, or Israel. And as I get into this, there is the timing that's close, that there were some inscriptions about Israel in the Egyptian hieroglyphics around the time of some of these dynasties. But I need time to kind of put all that together. I'm just thinking I would like to get some of this out. And you never know in today's world, but this completes my research as far as trying to pull the timeline and show how things transitioned from this Cronide bloodline that ruled the world into these pharaohs and kings and queens, and then into equating the pharaohs with these kings of Israel down to a new religion. It was through Osarseph, who probably was Akhenaten. And I do believe some of these texts of these ancient Greek scholars like Manetho and Diodorus Siculus are lost on purpose because they give a little bit too much away, especially Manetho and Diodorus Siculus, but it's just not taught in the schools. People are ignorant of this. So I'll get into this later. I just wanted to kind of pull this through to show how we lost the memory of these people. You know, these are basically cargo cults of this guy right here. Now, exactly what he was is a whole nother story. But this Osarseph is the culprit or person who caused us, along with the Hyksos, to lose the memory of this guy and his family and bloodline. So we'll talk about this later.